After months of drama, holdouts, Twitter feuds, TikToks, 49ers are finally ready to trade Brandon Aiyuk. And now they can't do it. That and more coming up on this episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to this Friday episode of Locked On NFL, your daily podcast covering the National Football League, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We thank you so much for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. I'm David Harrison. He is Tony Wiggins. We are both credentialed members of the media. I'm covering the Washington Commanders for Locked On Commanders. He's doing it for Locked On Jags, covering the Jacksonville Jaguars. And we are, of course, your Friday duo here at Locked On NFL. Locked On NFL is here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And everydayers, you already know it because you're here every day. But we appreciate you for coming through for today's show. Today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. On today's episode, we're going NFC West heavy here on this episode. We're going to talk about the new look Seahawks, whether or not the Rams can keep up their mojo, or the Arizona Cardinals close to getting to the top of this thing. We're all starting it off with the San Francisco 49ers, the Kings of the West, Kings of the NFC as of right now, because there's no other NFC champions right now. Possible Super Bowl contenders if they can stay healthy, if they can get their guys on the field who are healthy but aren't practicing. All kinds of stuff going on with the 49ers, Wig. And the latest is that after months and months and months of drama between the San Francisco 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk, and the 49ers saying we're not trading him, even though we talked to multiple teams ahead of the NFL draft about trading him, we're still not trading him. Finally, the San Francisco 49ers give Brandon Aiyuk's agents permission to go seek out new contracts with other teams to help set up and facilitate a trade. The Patriots offer a deal. Brandon Aiyuk says, not with Drake May. Now, Ricky Pearsall is injured. Christian McCaffrey is injured. You trade Brandon Aiyuk. You got George Kittle, who I like, but you got George Kittle, who's over 30, and Deebo Samuel. Wig, how does that impact the situation the 49ers find themselves in right now?
It has a big impact. And I love the way you framed that, because that's exactly what I was thinking. Everything you said is something that I was hitting. Here's where I'll add a little bit more to it. Deebo Samuel doesn't stay healthy. As good as a football player he is, he's like, because of the style of play that he plays, he's one of those dudes now that he's going to miss a game or two, or he's going to miss some snaps. He's going to limp off and be over there on the sideline grimacing or whatever, because he plays a very, very physical brand of football. But for a team whose window to win, I don't think it's closing, but it's been open for a while now. They've been to 3 Super Bowls, or, they lost to the Chiefs twice. They've been to 2 Super Bowls at least. And my thing is you don't get very many opportunities to do that. And they're doing it with a quarterback who's on a rookie contract, and they already have a whole bunch of people. They can't re-sign everybody. So they're going to have to take care of their quarterback here in the very near future, possibly this year or no later than next season. And they will have to do that with that window being open that long time. Trading Aiyuk right now is going to be horrific for them because, like you said, they just don't have the playmakers to run Mike Shanahan or Kyle Shanahan's offense if all of these guys go down at the same time. I also think, even though I trust in their ability to draft, and I like Ricky Pearsall, I saw him a lot in college, much to my chagrin, because he was killing. I was rooting against the team that he played for, but you still want to see him on an NFL level to make sure. This is not a team that is just trying to figure out how to win. This is a team that's been winning a lot, and they're trying to figure out how to win that last game. And you can't take a chance on a rookie without seeing him and then trading away another guy that's really sort of like a second, third team all-pro type player. You just can't do it.
Yeah, man. I mean, the San Francisco 49ers found themselves in a really rough spot. You know what I mean? Because Christian, I mean, the reports are the Christian McCaffrey's injury, it's just going to cost him the preseason, and it's like the whole abundance of caution and all that stuff. And that's fine. Maybe that's true. But like you mentioned, Deebo, goes out there and plays like a guy that you would think is nicknamed Debo. And that cost him some games. Like you said, George Kittle is over the age of 30, which everybody knows that's not what you want in a primary playmaker, but hoping that he can kind of continue his trend. I mean, Trent Williams sees writing on the wall and he's like, y'all need me to win a ring. So we're gonna talk business. Brandon Aiyuk essentially saying the same thing. You got Brock Purdy standing there saying like, "Hey guys, I kind of need all these weapons." Like, there's always been this. There's kind of been this talk around the league. Is Brock Purdy really that good? Is Kyle really that good of a play caller, or is it all the weapons he's got around him? And as much as people might think that's what's going on with Brock Purdy and the 49ers don't want to find out. They don't want to put that to the test and make him go out there without any of these weapons and try to prove that he can be a franchise leading quarterback all by himself. So the 49ers are in a really sticky situation because there's essentially only one way they're getting Brandon Aiyuk on the field, and that's to get him everything he's been asking for from jump, which they don't obviously want to do. But at the same time, he goes out and seeks a trade partner. The Patriots make him an offer. He turns it down. So they're probably like, bro, like, come on, man. You got exactly what you asked for, and now you don't want it. So I mean, I feel for John Lynch a little bit. I feel for Kyle Shanahan a little bit. And, from the outside looking in, like there's always kind of this mantra of like, well, why wouldn't you want to play for the 49ers? They're in the Super Bowl window, classic franchise, all this other stuff. And then because then you look at organizations out there like the one that I cover, the Washington Commanders, where a lot of people say no free agent would ever want to go there. That's a tragic franchise. The organization's trash. They never won anything. They haven't won anything in over 20 years. But then you got Bobby Wagner signing as a free agent because the things that matter to players don't necessarily matter to fans and don't necessarily matter to the media. Like out here, not living the life, Wig, we're like, you want a Super Bowl ring or you don't want a Super Bowl ring, Brandon? Go play your last year and then make your money next year. This isn't hard. Trent Williams, you still got 2 years left on your deal, bro. Go win a champion. You're one of the best left tackles to ever play the game. Got no Super Bowl rings. Go get a Super Bowl. The players don't think that way. This is how the players think, and it's put the 49ers in a really, really tough situation because, bro, I mean, this thing can go south for the 49ers and open some doors for the AFC West. Markedly, maybe most influentially, the Arizona Cardinals, who have a relatively new head coach, right? Not his first year, but still relatively new head coach. They seemed to do some pretty good things last year when Kyler Murray came back. Reports are that Kyler Murray is not going to play in the preseason. I would argue that they're trying to protect him to make sure he's available for the regular season. And of course, they got the son of a Hall of Famer out there to run and catch passes. So are the Arizona Cardinals close to making this thing a two-team race at the top of the NFC West? That conversation is going to come up next on today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors, and eBay Motors is bringing you passion, drive, and patience because the formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die vehicle alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle or even level it up to peak performance. They've got superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you will get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're going to burn rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So get that passion, drive, and patience going. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. With all the turmoil surrounding the San Francisco 49ers these days, is it possible that the crown of the NFC West could be up for grabs this season? And are the Arizona Cardinals the next team in line to potentially make a grab for that crown? That's what we're going to talk about here coming up next. Thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Get daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so that you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Tony, the 49ers, it's a really interesting conversation. We've had this conversation about the NFC East, right, where I've talked about and we've talked about the Washington Commanders and some people thinking that they could challenge to go from worst to first like the Houston Texans did and all this other stuff. And a part of the chemistry or part of the algorithm that creates the Washington Commanders as the NFC East Division champions this year is the Dallas Cowboys and Philadelphia Eagles kind of collapsing a little bit and coming back to the norm, right? The Philadelphia Eagles
Mhm.
obviously collapsed last year, so they've already kind of done that. The Dallas Cowboys, a lot of people view a collapse being very, very close to happening. So for the Arizona Cardinals win the NFC West, it's logical to say that the Niners would have to kind of come back to the pack a little bit. Looks like that could be happening with everything that's going on around there. What do the Arizona Cardinals need to do to put themselves in position to be that challenger if the 49ers do become weakened in the NFC West division?
They have to take a Detroit Lion step forward. And the reason why I brought them up, if you just look at the standings, they were 4-13, dude. I mean, come on, that's nothing to really be shaking, being all happy about. But I tell you what, if you watched them play, or if your team played against them, and I know, it's no consolation to play hard, and it's no consolation because other people because they did it to the Jaguars. I'll tell you what, Doug Peterson's first year here, Urban Meyer's last year here, when the Jaguars were the worst team in the league, Urban Meyer's last year here, you had John Harbaugh telling the players on the field, man, y'all play so hard. And they did. They played really, really hard, right? But it didn't do anything for them in the standings. But what you saw was as soon as they got a competent coach in here that understood stuff, those dudes won 9 games. So
Yep.
I don't know if the Arizona Cardinals are going to make the same step, but I trust Monty Ossenfort so much, and I like his drafts. And those guys are playing. They played hard. Every single week they were giving people the business. They still ended up 4-13. So now what they got to do is they got to win 4 more games. And
Yep.
if you win 4 more, you might be able to win 5 more. And if you get to 5 more games, that puts you at 9-8. And now you're doing what Detroit did, not this past season, but you're doing what they did in 2023. They barely missed the playoffs, but everyone was on notice that they were going to make a run. And they ended up making a run last year and getting all the way to the NFC Championship game. That's what they have to do. They're already headed in that direction because they play with so much grit, and they play for each other, and they play for their coach. Now you get the quarterback back, you get a superior talent on the outside, and you continue to add through the draft, which is what they did this past offseason. I think they got a very, very bright future. It just depends how quickly this thing turns around.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at their team, right, and you look at what they have, and I like what you said because again, if you stat scout this team and you just look at the win loss record, you're like, bro, what are you talking about? There's no way this team
Right.
is even on the verge of becoming a competitor in this division. But don't forget what a really good wide receiver can do for an NFL team. Like, yeah, quarterback's the most important player on the field. I think everybody agrees with that sentiment for the most part. Unless you play left tackle, then you're going to claim it's left tackle. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, when you talk about the resurrection of Jared Goff, I want to stick with the Lions here. So about the resurrection of Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown has got just as much to do with that as coaching, as scheme, all that stuff does. Because Amon-Ra St. Brown, what he gives Jared Goff is confidence. He gives confidence to him that I put the ball in this dude's area, and even if he doesn't catch it, this dude is so tenacious and so aggressive that he's going to make sure nobody catches. It's either going to be Amon-Ra or nobody. Marvin Harrison Jr., mild mannered, you know what I mean? But when he goes up for the ball or when the ball's in the air, he's that type of dude. Now let's flip to another team that took people by surprise, maybe ahead of schedule than they were considered, the Houston Texans. They go out there, and you could even say Nico Collins, but I don't say Nico Collins wig because I saw Nico Collins in Michigan. I saw Nico Collins at the Senior Bowl, and I remember telling anybody that would listen to me down in Mobile, Nico Collins is going to be a problem in the
Yep.
National Football League. And so I'm not surprised that Nico Collins has become what he's become. But Tank Dell took everybody by surprise. I can't claim Tank Dell. I don't know anybody that can. Greg Dortch, Michael Wilson, can they have that Tank Dell type of rise and impact on this Arizona Cardinals team? I don't know. Obviously, it hasn't happened yet, but could it happen? Nobody saw Tank Dell coming until Tank Dell happened. You still have veteran leaders like Budda Baker. I think that defense could still use a little bit more. But like you said, you're not talking about Detroit Lions that were supposed to be going to the Super Bowl, right? Honestly, if you want to be real about it, should have been going to the Super Bowl. We're talking about Detroit Lions the year before they should have been going to the Super Bowl. If that's where the Arizona Cardinals are now, then certainly you can start to see that competitive fire in them, and certainly you can start to believe that they can be a competitor for the San Francisco 49ers. But let's turn now to the Los Angeles Rams. I mean, the last team in this division to win a Super Bowl is in Southern California,
That's
not
right.
Northern California. So what about the Rams? I mean, are we forgetting about the Rams too soon, or do you think they can still, as you put it, deliver or keep this mojo going and maybe get another winning season out of this?
I think they're going to keep it going. And I doubted them before. I doubted them last year. I thought they were kind of done when Cooper Kupp went down, and I'm thinking like, okay, they're purging everything. At this point, there was a lot of talk that Aaron Donald was going to retire. They traded off Jalen Ramsey, and they started cutting people, and they started getting rid of a whole bunch of stuff that you think you need to win. And then all of a sudden they end up right back into the playoffs in a very, very tough division again. So I will never doubt Les Snead as a GM, and I won't doubt Sean McVay as a coach. And they've done something really, really well. And what that is not having first round picks until this past season, and they kept hitting on guys in the draft. Okay.
Yep.
They kept nailing it. They got the running back out of Notre Dame, and then they got Puka Nacua. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, where in the heck are all of these dudes coming from, right? And then they got Byron Young out of Tennessee and Steve Avila, the guard out of TCU last year. I look up this year, and they have a great draft. They took two of my Florida State Seminoles, Jarrett Verse and Braden Fisk. And then they took Blake Corum, a little tough, hard-nosed champion who's been coached really, really well. And I think they did it again. I think they have absolutely nailed the draft all over again, and they still have a healthy Matthew Stafford. Puka's a little bit banged up right now, but Kupp's going to be back a year removed from his injury. I think they're going to put it all together, man. We used to pick at Tutu Atwell, too, and he even made a couple of plays last year. So I would never doubt them again. They have the championship pedigree and DNA. Once you get it, it doesn't go away, right? So the whole building kind of walks around with the chest out. They have football self-esteem because they just won a title not too long ago. And they still have a dude that's a top 10 quarterback and one of the most talented passers we've seen in a long time. So I think the Rams are going to be right back there. And leave it up to me. I'm telling you what, I did it last year, but I'm not going to make the mistake this year of doing it again and doubting the Rams. I just can't do it.
I'll tell you what, man, I think you hit the nail right on the head because you basically entered into a conversation that I was going to enter on my own. And I love that you did because it shows that we're on the same wavelength with this team because this team is the one that, made F them picks notorious, right? But what they really did is they didn't F them picks. What they did is they nailed those picks.
Yep.
Because there's a difference between picking the best player. And when we talk about best player, I'm not talking about getting a Hall of Famer in the first round. I'm talking about the best player, quote unquote, according to ESPN's draft board or even the Locked On draft board, right? There's a difference between getting the quote unquote best player and getting the right player. Mm-hmm. And there's a difference between quality and quantity. What the Los Angeles Rams have done since they won the Super Bowl, like you just said, is gotten quality for the lack of quantity in their picks. You look at their depth chart, you just mentioned it. You got a 5th round pick starting, 3rd round pick starting, 2nd round pick starting on the line, another 2nd round pick starting on the line, 5th round pick if you're running as a starting running back, 2nd round pick expected to be a starter, 1st round pick, 3rd round pick, all within the last like 3 or 4 years. Another 3rd round pick. You got Cam Curl, who was a free agent from Washington, who's a good locker room guy. Behind him, Cam Kinchins, 3rd round pick, who they're probably grooming to potentially replace Cam Curl this time next season if that doesn't work out. Blake Corum, 3rd round pick. Bo Limmer, 6th round pick, who has all the potential in the world to potentially fill in if you absolutely need to. I mean, this team is nailing their draft picks, and that's how they're staying relevant, despite the fact that everybody says, well, they don't ever use their draft picks. No, they use them. They just might be using them actually better than pretty much every other team in the National Football League. And that's very, very interesting. It's kind of turned the theory of how you build your rosters because pretty much everybody says you build through the draft, supplement through free agency. Well, this team's saying, well, we build through free agency and trades, we'll supplement with the draft. And then here we are 3 years later, and they still have a very competitive roster with very few 1st-round picks actually starting on their starting 22 list.
The last team that did this to this degree was Seattle, the Legion of Boom. And I know we're going to talk about them next. Yeah. But go back and look at some of their drafts. You can go to drafthistory.com and pull it up by team. Look at Seattle in that era when they were winning. They missed a lot of 1st-round picks. Mm. And then they nailed the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. I can tell you right now, they got Cam Chancellor and Richard Sherman on day 3. It's unreal that a team could have that kind of I wouldn't even call it luck or good fortune. I call it good scouting. They know, like you said, they know who's best for them. And when a team can start doing that, and guess what? Stafford ain't going to play too much longer. So once his contract runs out, they're probably going to have somebody on a rookie deal. Give Les Snead a good quarterback on a rookie deal and watch him cook. And they're going to be dangerous for a long, long time.
Yep, absolutely. Speaking of those Seattle Seahawks, no Pete Carroll. Is it going to make a difference? How much different is this Seattle Seahawks team going to look in 2024? We'll talk about that next on this episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find qualified professionals that are right for the role you're trying to fill. And that's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. But LinkedIn isn't just another job board. No, LinkedIn helps you find professionals and hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for new jobs, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn's users don't visit another leading job site. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. And on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like professionals on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, so they're always finding new ways to make hiring easier and making the process smoother. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. When your schedule is packed with kids, activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. But we all need to have something in our self-care regimen that's a non-negotiable. Maybe you never skip leg day. Maybe you never skip doing yoga once a day, or maybe you never skip therapy day. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard for us to make time for it. Sometimes we even feel guilty doing things that make us feel better and that help take care of us. But it's incredibly important that you invest in yourself. So when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and you will get matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge as well. So never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Wrapping up a very NFC West heavy version of the Locked On NFL podcast here to wrap up the week. And we're going to start taking a look here at the Seattle Seahawks. We talked about the Niners, we talked about the Cardinals and the Rams. Now let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks, who lost a Super Bowl winning head coach. Pete Carroll is out. New OC, new DC, new special teams coordinator. They got a Harbaugh on staff. Jay Harbaugh is their special teams coordinator now. How different do you think this Seattle Seahawks team is going to look versus the style of play we've seen from this franchise in the past?
They're the most perplexing team that I can think of with trying to figure out what's it going to look like. I thought New England might be, but then Gerard Mayo is pretty much just an extension of Bill Belichick. I cannot figure it out for the life of me because I think, obviously, with their connections, they're going to look something like the Baltimore Ravens. But you just don't turn into the Baltimore Ravens overnight because the way their team was constructed, they didn't have a lot of players that looked like they played for the Baltimore Ravens before. They were a little bit small on the defensive line. Their ends who put their hands on the ground in a base 4-3 and an even front are smaller guys. Now, are they going to stand those guys up? Are they going to do a little bit of a hybrid? What's the defense going to look like? How's the personnel going to fit? Pete Carroll basically invented the brand of football that they've been accustomed to up there for the last couple of decades. They won championships. They've been very, very relevant. Now, that whole thing is going to switch around, albeit with people that I really do believe in and I really do trust. And I think they have great pedigree, but still, it's going to look different. They're going to have their own imprint on it. And it's really, really hard for me to try to imagine their personnel playing the way the Baltimore Ravens have played for so long.
Yeah, it's really interesting, man, because like you said, when you look at this roster, like there's not, bad names by any means on this roster, right? Like Jaron Reed had a lot of potential coming out of school. Jonathan Hankins has been around. for quite a while. Leonard Williams is a known name. Uchenna Nwosu, Nwosu, when he was with the Chargers, bro, like I wanted him on any team I covered. I was like, I just want to cover this dude. This dude is electric. He's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit older now, right? I remember
Mm-hmm.
Trey Brown coming out of school. He had some potential. Tariq Woolen. I mean, you talk about another Senior Bowl find. Like that's another dude that I was just ranting and raving about at the Senior Bowl. He's turned into a great product. And then Devin Witherspoon, the first round pick from last year. You know what I mean? Like, so you have a lot of really talented pieces, but we've seen it time and time again. And we're just talking about the defense right now, right? We've seen it time and time again where just because you have great players or really good players that played for one system doesn't mean they can transfer to another system and have the same level of impact. I always go to Nnamdi Asomugha. I know I'm showing my age a little bit with that name there, but greatest cornerback to ever play the game, a lot of people said. And then he goes and signs a big fat free agent contract, and all of a sudden he ain't nothing. So fit matters, and like you said, how these defensive players fit with what you expect to be a very aggressive, but different type of aggressive than we've seen from the Seattle Seahawks defense. I think the Seahawks defense has always been aggressive, but the way they were aggressive was the
Right.
difference, right? And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see if Mike McDonald and his DC come through here and alter their own aggression for their roster, or if they try to fit their players into what they like to do. Then on offense, I mean, new offensive coordinator, new style of play potentially, right? Quarterbacks, like the history of new offensive coordinators, new offensive, new quarterbacks is that quarterbacks tend to take a step back. If Geno Smith takes a step back, I mean, might it be time for people to start writing them off again, even if you don't want to write back? Like, there's a possibility here that what this new system is may not fit Geno Smith very well. Sam Howell traded from Washington to Seattle. Seattle traded for him because the people involved in that decision said we saw him play and we were like, man, this dude has got what it takes. Well,
Mm-hmm.
the reports coming from my guy Greg Bell out of Seattle, who I trust very, very well, the Sam Howell don't look all that good. Sam Howell doesn't look like the guy that they thought they were trading for.
See?
Is that scheme? Is that system? Is it, you know what I mean? What's the fit? Like, and I'll tell you right now, Sam Howell can surprise people and say, man, you don't look very good. Geno Smith could potentially do that too. And he's been dealing with some injury issues as well. So the Seattle Seahawks, I think you're right. I think like right there with, I'm still perplexed at what the Patriots are really going to be. I'm hoping Jacoby can kind of hold them together because Jacoby's a really good dude and he deserves his opportunity.
Right.
But I don't know. Just like you said, I really don't know. Outside of some name recognition, I don't know what the Seattle Seahawks are going to be in 2024.
Yeah, I don't even. I look at the draft and they got Byron Murphy, a pick that for them I didn't understand because he's undersized. And I'm wondering, okay, like how's he going to play? That's not like a Baltimore Raven type player. He's 6'1", 297 pounds. I do like Christian Haynes. That is a pick that I could see Baltimore making in the past because he's a guard center, a Ben Grubbs type who can play both ways and he can get it done. So it's going to be real interesting to see how they jive their scheme with their players. You talked about it. You said that they've always played defense a certain way. They played it with a lot of energy, and even with smaller guys, they played with guys who played bigger than their stature. Well, Baltimore plays like bully ball and brute strength. So I want to see the differences, the little things that happen to see this team transform. I think the coaches are smart enough that they're going to do what these guys do best until they can get guys that are best at doing what they want to do. So it's going to be very, very interesting. But if you put a gun to my head and told me to pick who's going to come last, I would probably say Seattle in the NFC West.
I mean, look, I'm still going to pick the Cardinals until they tell me, they give me a reason. Like I'm with all the talk about don't get fixated on the 4 wins, but I'm still gonna go Cardinals until they show me that we're right in saying don't pay attention to the 4 wins, right? But of
Gotcha.
course, if you want more on all these NFC West teams, Locked On 49ers host Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker, Locked On Rams host Travis Rogers and Doug McCain, Locked On Cardinals host Alex Clancy, and Locked On Seahawks hosts Corbin Smith and Rob Rang have got you covered 5 days a week here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So if you don't want more than just our national view of it, by all means, go check out our good buddies over there. Make sure you're also back here on Monday. Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens will be back with a whole new episode of Locked On NFL, and he's got actual football to talk about on Monday. So we'll see what storylines come up over the weekend. For your second listen of the day, check out Locked On Fantasy Football. Get your daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so that you can win your league this season. And as always, thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day, every day. Thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. For Tony Wiggins, I'm David Harrison. We will see you right back here next Friday for another episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.